We are sponsored by Raise Energy, powered by the enhanced refresh technology. Raise Energy delivers with a performance-enhancing energy drink that aids in the most often overlooked categories. Raise Energy targets focus, enhances your recovery time, improves clean energy levels, and boosts your stamina and hydration. Most importantly, each single can of Raise Energy has absolutely 0 calories, 0 sugar, and 0 carbohydrates, which that gives you a smarter and more healthier option. You should not have to settle for an energy drink that contains more sugar and carbs than you can count. Opt for the #1 fan-voted energy drink on the market today with Raise Energy. If you want to get yourself a can of Raise Energy, go to repsports.com, REPP sports.com. Use my promo code HPP1000, HPP1000 at checkout, and you will receive a generous discount. Welcome to the Hodgepodge Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Dylan Hodge, but you guys already know that. Thanks for joining in on the next episode of the Hodgepodge Podcast. We got a good one for you today. I'm glad I can call this guy a friend now. Steve Azar is on the show today. Steve Azar he's a country music artist, and he made it big in the early 2000s. He was part of my childhood. So there are two people, really. Honestly, there's two people that are not in my top artists of all time in the 2000s, where when I was a child going to school, these two, there are two songs. The first one would be Phil Vassar's American Child, and then it would be Steve Azar's I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday. Those were the two songs that were constantly playing on country radio when I was going to school early in the mornings. And so those two, when I hear those songs, I associate and I go back to my childhood in my early days. So it was great time to it was a great chat that I had with Steve Azar, and I was very, very appreciative of Steve's willingness to work with my schedule, and we had to work out a few things, but I'm so thankful he called in to the podcast, and we talked a little over half an hour about just, being in the music business and, starting music late and just being around music your entire life. He talks about his kids nowadays, what's going to happen if his kids want to become musicians. We talk about that. We talk about a whole bunch of stuff here, and especially the Waitin on Joe and I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday. We have to throw those in as well. So without further ado, please welcome my guest today, the great, one and only, Steve Azar. Thanks for jumping on with me. I really appreciate it, Steve.
Absolutely. Back at you.
Man, there was if there was a country singer that reminds me of my childhood, there's two people. That is you, Steve, and there's also Phil Vassar, because you two had a song that was playing every morning when I was going to school back in the day. It was your I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday, and then it was Phil Vassar's American Child. So you two scoped out my childhood and colored it in perfectly.
He's a good friend of mine, which I love. It's funny because when we had, I think Waitin on Joe sort of crossed into that American Child time,
right?
And that was a good time for Phil and I as writers, because we wrote those songs. I'm pretty sure Phil wrote that alone as well. And I think that it sort of gave the community, really started to, get behind us as far as the songwriting community. And I think that was one of those times where we had it was just a really cool period among our songwriter peers because we both are singer-songwriters and we both were coming sort of the same route, not necessarily anything traditional, doing our own thing. And that was a good time for both of us.
So, kind of, who was, before we go, to your childhood, kind of who was in your class, when you come to Nashville, who was kind of there that you kind of saw kind of get big when you did?
Well, Phil and I definitely, because Phil had written some hits. I sort of screwed up a little bit. I was writing strictly for myself.
Okay.
And I had opportunities to get some cuts from some pretty cool acts. But I felt like I needed those songs.
Right.
And I probably shouldn't have. I should have let go and did that. But I came to town for one purpose, and that was to get back out on the road. I'd been playing on the road most of my life, writing songs, and I just wanted to get better at my craft and had some great publishers who were. Roger Murrah was Songwriter of the Decade at one point, voted, and then Mark Allen Springer Songwriter of the Year, and then Rafe Van Hoy, who I made the Waitin on Joe album with, was one of the greatest ever. I mean, so I was really surrounded by some guys that really, helped mold me. And so as far as a songwriter was concerned, I was on my own time clock, meaning I could be told whatever they want to tell me, but at some point it sort of has to click. And I was still wanting to do things my way. I had everybody wanting me to be a little of them, and that wasn't the way it needed to be. So until I decided that I could take what they were telling me, as far as advice, and then use it in my own way. So it could not be their way. I couldn't sing their way. I couldn't say things their way. And so at some point, I figured out my own way. And once I did that, I became very stubborn to sticking to what I needed to be because it took me a lifetime to figure out who I was. And
but being stubborn,
that was it. Yeah.
No, but being stubborn in your own way, although that does have some flaws, it's still a good thing, though.
Well, it became a good thing, and it's become a good thing as the years have gone by, for sure. Because songwriting to me, it's not complicated anymore. I mean, at some point, you know what you're chasing, or you know to quit chasing. A lot of times you spent so much time just banging your head against something that you shouldn't have even been spending any time on in the first place because you were trying to write a song rather than trying to write something from inspiration. So I've been at a point probably for the last 20 years of my life where it's really been easy. And I don't mean that in a bad way. What I'm saying is I don't have a weapon to my head. I'm like, you have to write this right now. I wasn't built to go in the writing room every day and eat. My joke is eat Captain Crunch, your cereal of choice, and then go in your room and write a hit. I mean, that's just not who I am. I get inspired by being out amongst the people, playing for people, sound checks. I've written, Sunshine was written at a sound check first night of 48 with Bob Seger in Grand Rapids. It's something about the air, the mood of the day, or and I've been inspired by Mississippi beyond words. So, but getting back to your original question, there was Pat Green and I. Pat was from Texas.
Yep.
And I was in that, and then we met one day playing a show in Rochester. We looked at each other on stage, and we go, well, "Who are you?" And he said, "Who are you?" And by the end of the night, he'd given me his guitar. I'd given him my sunglasses, my necklaces. I mean, we were so happy that we had stumbled across each other because we both knew that we weren't this perfect fit in this perfect box, but yet we were having success. So, I've always gravitated toward the songwriter. Dina Carter, another example, really good friend of mine, done a lot of shows together, shared a band, shared the stage so many times. She's like a sister. And she was another one that, with Strawberry Wine, I remember getting a record deal offer the day after I went in to play for the guys, Herky Williams, and it was Liberty at the time, which was part of Capitol Records. And Herky played me Dina Carter's Strawberry Wine, and I said, "Why isn't that out?" And he goes, "Well, we know it's great, but we don't know if it's country." I said, "Are you kidding? I mean, it's just great. Just put it out." in my mind, I learned a lot. And I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday had a similar story, meaning it sat on everybody's desk for 2 years until I wrote Waitin' on Joe. And when I wrote Waitin' on Joe, then that's when Monday got to find the light of day.
But isn't that crazy to think that, because I know Waitin' on Joe, but I don't think if you were to say, "Hey, Steve Azar, tell me who this guy is," they would bring up the Monday song. They wouldn't bring up Waitin' on Joe. So did you?
Well, they would have to. Yeah, sure. I mean, Monday's been the size of like 6, 7 number ones. I mean, it's ridiculous how many times it's been played. But with that said, my diehard fans know Waitin' on Joe.
Right. So when so you said that I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday was on the desk for 2 years. It wasn't being passed around until you wrote Waitin' on Joe. At that point, were you when I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday was on the was on the desk for 2 years, what was going on in your mind? Like, what were you thinking at that point? Was it like, oh my God, this will never get heard from anybody? Kind of what was that mindset like at that point?
Well, I mean, you're frustrated because you know that the clock is ticking. At that point, I'm 35 when it's sitting on their desk, and I'm 37 when it becomes a hit. And in the eyes of Music City or in the eyes of an artist finally breaking, you're sort of older, right? Mm-hmm. I never saw that like that, but looking back, I was. So to have I always say I was 37 when I had my first hit. And that's pretty late in the game, considering I'd been making music my whole life. Now, I was successful enough to get some cuts in Germany and to get some cuts around. I was successful enough to play live and make a living. When I graduated college, we had 200 one-nighters on the books. Ended up with 2 28-foot trucks and 10 guys on the payroll. So we were, me and my brother Joe, and we were out wearing it out. So in a way, we were sort of prisoners to all the gear we bought and everything. We had to keep playing. And I was shopping in L.A. and New York. I was never shopping in Nashville. Now, I was when I was 14. I tried to get a deal when I was 14. This is back when I was younger. But it ended up being New York and L.A. that I was drawn to. And I almost got signed to Atlantic. But it didn't. It just wasn't meant to be. And then I found myself at a really big crossroads of like, okay, what am I doing? Like what am I going to do? Because this is all I've ever wanted to do. I'm committed to it, so there's no plan B, right? So what am I? And so then things just started to happen. Old friends, new friends. You got to go to Nashville and meet this guy. You got to go, and all of it started to happen. But the crazy thing is this: my first manager's in Nashville. Rick Sanchek ran Atlantic Records for a while when Willie was cutting records, and his dad was one of the founders of BMI, and he had already told me no. We had sent the music, so me recording, just playing back then on a reel to reel and trying to do it as good as I could. Some of the newer stuff, which I was 24 at the time, I think. Well, I sent him stuff, and maybe I was 20. I think I was 26. And so then we sent him that in a picture and some songs, and he politely said no. Well, when I started getting folks who were starting to go, you need to go to Nashville, meet this guy. So I took a trip. And I decided when I had some time, before I even went to my first meeting, I'm going to go by there and just see if he'll see me. And I knocked on the door, and they go, yeah, can we help you? And they said, well, he goes, I go, Steve Azar. He said, oh, yeah, we got but we've already said no to you. And I said, I know, but I was kind of hoping you'd let me play live for you. And he goes, well, you don't look like your picture, so maybe you don't sound like your songs. That's what he told me. Wow. So I said, wow, I don't know how to take that, but I'm in the door. I'm coming in. So I played the same songs that I played him, thinking that maybe it just needed to be live. And that would turn him on a little bit. And then he said, well, I'm just not hearing anything. And then I started to put my guitar up, and that was it. Thinking, okay, what do I do now? I'm going to go to these next meetings. What the heck am I going to play for people? This isn't working. And all of a sudden he goes, hey, before you put that up, can you play me? Can you remember some of the first songs you ever wrote? And I went, yeah, I think I can. I think I can. And I was like, my God, please God, let me remember, right? I mean, this is when I was 11, right?
Yeah.
12 and 13. So I pulled out truly not the first four I wrote, but the next four. And one thing was called A Vision, and it was really sort of about purgatory, and somehow I remembered it. I guarantee I hadn't played it in 10 years. And so I played that, and he goes, play me another. And I played him another one. And somehow I remembered. And he looked at me and he goes, you're a songwriter. And I went, what? And he goes, this is what I needed to hear. And before I walked out of there, he had offered me a deal. And so I decided, I had a meeting with Al Bonetta, who was John Prine's manager and partner, and oh boy. I said, well, I'm going to go on over there and I'm going to play these same songs. So I did. And Al Bonetta said, you're a songwriter. He goes, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks. When I get back, I'm going to bring John in, and we're going to sign you. And I couldn't wait 2 weeks. So when he came back from vacation, I was already signed. And then I got quite a few offers at that point. I can't remember how many, but isn't that funny? I'd written probably 500 songs, and I went back to the beginning, to the number 5, 6, and 7 songs I wrote in my life as a kid. And that's what got the door open. And that did it. And after that, it was just a matter of really locking in and being inspired. And, I love to write about home. So that was a big struggle for me because I wanted to write about home and I was trying to. So Waitin on Joe did that. But I learned how to do it in a way that everybody could get it wherever they're from. But I knew where I was from. And eventually, it led to My Mississippi Reunion and Delta Soul Volume 1. And, Bob Seger wanted me to tour with me, a lot of it because he goes, you're really from there. Folks don't know that Old Time Rock and Roll was one of the, co-writers was from Greenville, Mississippi. It's just insane. Our Mississippi has cropped some incredible songwriters.
Yes.
So anyway, at some point, Mississippi and Music City started making sense as one body of work to me. And then it started to really work on a national and global level.
It's funny you said that, you had a meeting and they're like, go back to your early stuff, the first stuff you ever, which you mentioned you were like 11 or 12 years old. And when you hear, like, I've interviewed numerous Nashville artists and just artists in general, and it's like their first songs were terrible. Like, it was about, they were talking about a truck, and then for some reason the song veered off to talk about a female or something like that. And it's crazy to think that you were actually, like, you had a gift at 11 years old to write music, and they actually thought it was good. And I mean that respectfully.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm gonna one better me. You ready for this?
Sure,
and we can one better me to death.
Okay.
But my boys Darius and Mark and Dean and Sony, Hooting the Blowfish, that was all their first stuff that they wrote together. That became that huge record. Now think about that. So I got it right to get me publishing deals and get me people believing in me. They got it right to be huge hits.
Yeah, and have one of the biggest selling albums of all time.
Yeah, so think about that. Now, they were older and they were in college and there were 4 of them, and somehow the worlds collided in a perfect way, right?
Right.
It was just magic dust. But so I always think about, wow, I mean, because most of my really good friends are songwriters and producers and all that, and they all were on my journey. A lot of us had similar paths. But we all had gifts. But most of us took a long time to figure out how to use those gifts, and in a very honest way, how can you become just yourself? Because music is inspiring and it's addictive. Of course, people that listen to me, we all love to consume music, and we love it, and you're fans, right? You can't help it. Well, at some point, how does this artist I don't want to be that artist, but you can't help but to be influenced by it. You don't want to be this artist, and you want to be, you know what I mean? You have to become yourself. And that is the hard part. And so anyway, I love working with young artists now, and I have been doing that quite a bit. We're starting to see some success. And I know how to find that in them now. And there's one kid in high school from Jonesboro, Drew Pulliam. We're getting that out. There's Tyler Tisdale, who's just turned 30 from Petal, Mississippi. He's at a couple 2.5 million streams. He's starting to get there and starting to tour. And I know every mistake that I made, so I can avoid that for them. Every mistake that publishers and producers made, because I had the biggest producing me. But it was me and Rafe that went into Van Hoy that went into his basement and made a record for free. That was the one that did it. That was Monday and Joe and all that. That was the one that set things up. And that cost him no money. It just cost us our time. So we learned a lot, man. So now I really love mentoring. I'm in this show now called Banded, which is it's going to be on Access TV. It airs May 13th.
Okay.
Brandon Jenner's the lead. I'll send you the press release. Sure. Brandon Jenner's the host. It's Mark Schulman from Pink and Simple Minds, and he's a drummer, and it's Vince Neil from Motley Crue's a judge, and there's these 5 bands living in one house, and they've been put together. And so I went in and I was a mentor in one of the episodes, and that's a very comfortable fit for me now, and I love doing it.
Wow, that sounds like a very interesting show. But I do have a couple more questions for you. So how do you keep from getting, I should say this, with me being in journalism and having a podcast, sometimes I feel that though it's what I wanted to do in life, it's also becomes a job. So how do you keep music and songwriting and producing, like how do you keep it from becoming a job to you?
Oh, man. It just never has felt that way.
Really?
I can't explain it. And maybe because it's music, you know?
So, yeah.
I wish I could explain. But maybe the explanation is, look, what turns, when you are in a particular mood, music makes you feel good. It makes you feel sad. It moves you in constant emotions, right? This constant stream of emotions, you feel it all. So I think because it's music, and I've always written myself out of tough times. I think that's being around Eugene Powell and it was Sonny Boy Nelson's my first experience when I fell in love with music at 10. I mean, I think it's those guys, Little Milton and folks that were sort of always calling me Little Azar. I don't know, man. I've always written songs that came from a heavy place, and I'd always find the silver lining in the blues is written from pain, and I think that's my version, you know? So it's always a healing thing for me. So no matter what happens, I always feel better when I do it, and I love playing live. So I love writing songs, and I love recording songs, but they would be incomplete if you couldn't take them to the people, because at that point, that's my total joy, is having the moment with folks, and then that feedback or that feeling on stage plus that feedback from the audience is priceless, you know. And it's the cherry on top, and you know, it's almost like, you know, it's like having a banana split with one flavor ice cream. You got to have it all, you know.
Yeah, right. So you're from Greenville. I am from a little town in Wiggins. So have you had any kind of connection with Wiggins or Hattiesburg or somewhere close to here? Just
well, I know of Wiggins. I mean, I absolutely know. I know of Wiggins. I don't know if we played ball there growing up or whatever, but one of my big mentors and the guy that ran my record label when I left and went on my own was Harry Bud Nelson, and he was from right around Wiggins. He's a legendary radio guy.
Okay.
Legendary. And he was the one that goes, Steve Azar, make your music. And I said, and he was in Boston when I met him. He was the program director there. And I said, I'm trying. You know, he goes, finally when I started doing it, I was waiting on Joe and the Rivers working in Indianola, and he goes, now you're making your music. He was just so happy. And so when I left Universal, the big label, and did my own thing, which has been so incredibly important for me, I asked him to run my record label until he passed away. I mean, he was my guy. This is my guy. So I knew when I was on the right path when he would start smiling. You know, he was just a song guy. You know, he knew when you were being honest. And now I think he left me enough of that in my life now that I know when I'm being honest with myself that I, at some point I didn't need him to tell me. You know, he prepared me to be ready for myself. And anyway, it's been such a wonderful journey, I got to tell you.
Yeah, man. I mean, life's a dance. You learn as you go, right?
Yeah, it is. Exactly right.
So, two last questions for you. The first one is obviously you got to talk about it. How did this song, I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday, how did that come about?
All right, so there was a series of songs written, and two of them made that Waitin' on Joe record. One was One Good Reason Why.
Right.
And then the other was I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday. Well, I'm going to tell you. I mean, it was just flew out of my mouth, and I apologized when I said it because I thought it was the stupidest thing. I said it wasn't even something that was thought out. It was just came flying out, right? So, and sometimes you have to put yourself in the room, and the song, they say, writes itself. And that, in a lot of cases, that is the case. Not all the cases. Sometimes you really have to really think, So, but I had written a series of songs. I was with a couple buddies of mine, one in my band, one guy in my band, Jason Young, and then R.C. Bannon was at one point married to Louise Mandrell. R.C. told me no because he was working at RCA when I came to town. At that same day that I got offers, he said no to me because they were looking for another hat act. He goes, obviously you're not a hat act. Like they were looking for another Garth, right?
Yeah.
Because Garth was high. And so, but what happened was we met and played each other in a golf. He was the best known as, at the time, him and Vince Gill and Marty Rose, sort of the best of the best golfers in the music industry. And I came in and won this music industry tournament with RC in it. And then we became golf partners. So for 8 or 9 years, we played golf and never wrote together. And we won probably 30 or 40 tournaments together.
Interesting.
Even if they were one-day tournaments. So we were insane good together. And all of a sudden, we decided to write, and we were writing something else, and then that came out. It came out of my mouth. And I apologized, and my percussionist, Jason, goes, wait a minute. That's something. And RC said, that's something. And I said, really? So, but the inspiration came from, and you look back and you go, why did I say it? My roommate from Delta State, played golf. He played golf there. He was from Chicago. And he had gone over the years that we had gotten out of college and built this huge company up and made a fortune, right? Mm-hmm. But he had worked himself to death. Like, he worked hard. And his wife called and said, you got to get him to come visit you. He's about to have a breakdown. So he came in on Thursday, and he was a very good athlete. Like, truly one of the best athletes I've ever been around. So we played tennis, we played basketball, we played ping pong, we went bowling, we played pool, we threw the baseball. We did everything, right? Everything over the weekend. Played golf. It was an extravaganza sport weekend. On Monday, I took him back, and I looked at him and said, man, you got all your color back? You look good. Because he looked like hell when I picked him up. And he goes, it's just good not to be myself. And that stuck with me for a long time. And it was a long weekend, and I promise you that looking back, I was trying to write something based off of maybe just getting away, but I never thought about getting away from yourself. But when I look back, and once that started to be written, then I realized, oh my God, that was that moment in the airport. Yeah. It revealed itself. Even though I wasn't quite aware of it, it just eventually revealed itself. And that was it. Who would think that your roommate from college would if all those years before when I was playing, if he could have told me, hey, I'm going to be major inspiration when you absolutely need it. You'd never believe it. Yeah. So anyway, pretty cool.
Yeah. So this last question is kind of a double hitter. But you've done a lot of interviews, I imagine, throughout your career. What is one question that you're always going to get asked when you're doing an interview?
Well, you haven't asked me any of them yet. So I'm trying to think. Man, that's not a fair question because, I always really appreciate what everybody's, what you're doing. What question you always get asked? I think it's probably to do with Waitin' on Joe. A lot of people, I would say the bulk, is who's Joe? I think that's been the one question that everybody seems to want to know. So did your brother die? And I go, okay, no, here's the deal. That's why there's Morgan Freeman. He had to explain this.
Right.
Joe was my brother who I worked with, who was always a little late, more than a little late. Had no problem with it. I was always early. So we struggled with that. You know, that was a battle, especially as you get older. And so I wrote this verse on the piano, which I don't play, which I eventually, you know, I get signed with a piano in me rather than, well, anyway. The second verse was about, I was goofing off and there was no chorus. And I was just at the piano and I started talking about the towboat and leaving. I remember, you know, a lot of friends who, one of my dear friends' dad, you know, he'd come home and he couldn't settle in when he was off the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually I wrote The River's Working, which was inspired by the captain when I was shooting the Waitin on Joe video when he came out and he held his coffee cup in the air. And I couldn't tell if it was sweat or a tear. And I was filming the Joe video and he said, "The river's working." And I went, "Oh my God, that's beautiful." You know, so a lot was going on. Those songs were joined at the hip. They're first cousins, as I say. But the Joe in the second verse was my dream. And I was at a point where a third child was about to be born and I was not that artist that the world knew, that the country knew. And I hadn't had those hits on the radio as an artist, songwriter, singer-songwriter artist. And so I was really, I had a lot of anxiety there. And so that was it. And then my Uncle Joe, I started thinking, I passed my Uncle Joe's age at 33 a couple years before, or maybe 3 years before, and realized that he died he was a Mayor Clarksdale. He died of cancer, a long battle. Wow. And he was only 33 and his son was 5. And I was going like, wait a minute, I thought that was old when I was 9 years old when he passed. I was 9 when he passed. And, right? You think 33, so you don't know.
Exactly.
So anyway, so the cancer was the train and a metaphor. So when Morgan Freeman moved back to Mississippi, I had the stupid idea. You know, my brother and I both did. I think we said, let's see if Morgan's got to explain what I was trying to. That these Joes are 3 different Joes, and I was cutting the grass, and at my house, and the chorus hit me, and I was going, oh my God, Waiting on Joe. All 3 of them are Waiting on Joe, but for some reason, I never put the 3 verses together in my head. It was never really an intentional song, and then I went up and recorded it. And played all, you know, did all that, and did all my little box I had, and I brought it to my producer, and he said, "Oh my God!" So he played it for Keith Stegall, and when Keith Stegall was, you know, one of the biggest producers in Nashville, he had Alan Jackson and all that, and Keith Stegall calls me, I think a few days later, and goes, "Hey, I got a golf tournament. I would like you to come play." And the whole day he kept going like, "So what's this Waiting on Joe thing?" I said, "What? How do you know that?" And I was almost embarrassed because he's a great producer, and I did this upstairs on a little box, a little Roland 1680 that I've saved, by the way, the original track.
Wow.
And I'm about to release that original track, the original demo of Waiting on Joe. And looking back, it was that did it, and I was like, wow. You know, so I think that's probably the question I get asked, but they don't know that. So there's so much history behind it.
Yeah. So what the second part to this question, and I'm not trying to keep you long, I promise, Steve. I'll get you off here. What is the one question or one topic that you never get asked in an interview and you go, I wish they would ask me this or talk to me about this because I want to talk about it so much?
Hey, now, I don't know if I want to talk about it so much, but I got to tell you, nobody asked about my wife and family. I mean, you know, I've had friends in the music business that unfortunately have combed through 3 wives, you know, and Brady Bunch kids and families and all that. And I've been married to the same incredible girl for 33 years. And I love her mom and dad, and I love her sisters and her brother. And then I love our family, you know, and nobody really asks me about, you know, the main reason I moved back home to Mississippi was I wanted for them, first of all, to understand Mississippi, my kids. Because they were 15, 13, and 10 when they moved to Nashville. So if I'm asked this or not, I tell everybody. It changed their world. And I wanted to get to know them and spend time on the basketball court with them, with middle one who was really good. And I just wanted to really get to know them before it was too late because I was on a tour bus for 18, 20 years, you know? Yeah. So anyway, and they would go with me until they couldn't. And when the school started, they couldn't, you know? There was no way. and they had their own lives. They had sports, and they had all this. And I was missing everything. I mean, we were road hounds, man. We were out there working, and so I was a every once in a while dad. So a lot of people don't ask how hard it is on your wife to raise kids, and get them prepared for the world when the dad's missing all the time.
Right. Walker Hayes has a great song that kind of describes that, where he was talking about growing up and he wished his dad was home all the time, but all he would do was put down the suitcase. And then he kind of turned it into how he wanted to play music, and then he finally got a key, but every time he leaves the house, he figures out that he's carrying a guitar case instead of a suitcase. And he's like, it's the same situation over and over again.
Exactly. That's a good point. Well, there you go, right there. That's exactly what we're talking about right there.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So do you have any, you a grandpa yet, Steve?
No, I'm not.
Really?
But our kid's married. I mean, one's in med school, second year, and one is in California. He just had his first feature film that's won some awards around the country and some cool festivals.
What film was that?
Called The Finality.
Oh, okay.
It won the best Mississippi film at Oxford Film Festival, but it won in Louisiana. It won Best of Show at one of the film festivals. At Newport Beach, it was up. Austin, Texas. Anyway, he filmed it down here before COVID. One of his lead actors is in Stranger Things now. Augustus Sherman, or Sherman Augustus, one of the.
Okay.
I get those backwards. Anyway, but the movie is, first. He's a writer, and he nailed it, man. We're proud of him. We think that it's one of those situations where it sounds like he's going to land on one of the platforms that's going to get all their money back for shooting their first movie. So,
right.
Anyway, so we're excited for him. And then my daughter is graduating from Arkansas this week, and followed her mom's footsteps, except that's where I met my wife playing. The joke is I stole her off the shoulders of a Sigma Chi, at one of my shows. That's totally the truth. And anyway, she's probably gonna go if she doesn't get this job in Boston. She's in the food world. She's at a food block since she was like 13, and she's gonna go to culinary school after in New York. She's all into the. I mean, our kitchen's been her test kitchen since as far back as we can remember.
So is she a great cook though? Has she fed you?
She's really good, man.
She's really good.
She's not afraid. And she's not afraid. She's catered for 80, 100 people by herself at a time. Like it's nothing. Wow.
Crazy.
She's cool. She's a tough girl. Anyway, it's all good,
Yeah. Well, man, look, if I can find it, I will send you a picture of it. I have the original. I don't know if I'm sure it's the first pressing of the Waitin on Joe on cassette. Very cool. I kept all my cassettes, all my CDs, all my stuff from when I was a child, and I have it because of that. I don't have to maybe till Monday song. Like I said, I was a nerd for that song, and I still have it. And I think it's one of the coolest things that to keep music is very cool.
Hey, I've seen a yacht named. I don't have to get these people. We were in Myrtle Beach, and this couple came running up to me when I was playing in a golf tournament there at I think it was Monday after the Masters, and they, you got to come see our boat. And so they convinced me, and then there it was. It's called I Don't Have to Be Me Till Monday.
That's
great.
That's
big old yacht. I told him, I said, I love that. That is just too cool. Anyway, it's been good, man. It's been a good run, and the way I look at it, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you wanting to talk to me. So, new friends, I'm always here. You let me know if you need anything.
All right, Steve, and we will get you. I'll get you back on my actual podcast, and we'll do like an hour-long Zoom call or something like that in the near future.
Sure, I'd love it.
All right, thanks, Steve. Have a good one, brother.
You too, man. Bye-bye.
Dano's Seasoning is changing the world one table at a time by offering the best all-natural, low-sodium seasoning products on the market. Dano's goals are to provide you with real flavors to make healthier food choices without ever having to sacrifice the real taste. Dano's includes low sodium, which is only 50 milligrams per serving. It has all natural, unrefined sea salt. There's no sugar, no MSG, no chemicals, and it's completely gluten-free. Also, there's 100% natural ingredients. Dano's Seasoning is the most versatile seasoning on the market. Grill, smoke, bake, create soups, sauces, marinades. You can also sprinkle Dano's on your eggs, your potatoes, maybe some pizza, maybe some pasta, and even while you're watching a movie, sprinkle some Danos on popcorn. Heck, if you're crazy, why don't you put some Danos on ice cream? Any food that exists, you can put some Danos on it. Go to danoseasoning.com, use my promo code HODGEPODGE, capital H and a capital P in Hodgepodge. Guys, remember to do that. Just like the spelling of the podcast, a capital H and a capital P in Hodgepodge. You can try all 3 flavors, which include original, spicy, and hot chipotle right now today. It's damn good. Yum, yum. Get you some. We are sponsored by Raise Energy, powered by the enhanced refresh technology. Raise Energy delivers with a performance-enhancing energy drink that aids in the most often overlooked categories. Raise Energy targets focus, enhances your recovery time, improves clean energy levels, and boosts your stamina and hydration. Most importantly, each single can of Raise Energy has absolutely 0 calories, 0 sugar, and 0 carbohydrates, which that gives you a smarter and more healthier option. You should not have to settle for an energy drink that contains more sugar and carbs than you can count. Opt for the #1 fan-voted energy drink on the market today with Raise Energy. If you want to get yourself a can of Raise Energy, go to repsports.com, REPP sports.com. Use my promo code HPP1000, HPP1000 at checkout, and you will receive a generous discount.